What is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk. I am your main man, So Real Sunil, and I have a very special guest this way to me, Mr. Rob Shu of All 49ers SI. And I feel so very special because, Rob, you've been MIA for a while, man. I haven't really seen you on anybody's stream. Tell us what's been going on, my man.
Yeah, man, a couple of weeks of actually trying to get my equipment set up. You may notice a better camera setup, and you and I just jumped through some hoops trying to get the audio going. I had to go back to the old microphone, but I'm looking forward to when I can rock my new Shure SM7B. Just got a little delayed echo going on, the fun of live streaming, good stuff. And then, a couple of things here and there. It was the end of our dead period, so I got in my vacations.
Nice.
Saw some family. Man, I saw my parents for the first time in about 2 years in person.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
I mean, what'd they say? Did they say, "Oh man, you looking good? You looking bad? You got fat? You got skinny"?
They were pleased that I hadn't put on a ton of weight during COVID, so that's good.
That's awesome, man. Well, I feel honored that you made your resurgence back with me. So that's great. So just to start out, Rob, I know most people know you, but I did want to give you a chance kind of just to introduce yourself and more importantly, your story with football, how you got into it, how you became a 49ers fan, and run us through the gambit, my man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on, man. It has been a rough couple of weeks without any live streams. This is what I feed off of, right? So I'm glad to be back out there, and there's going to be live content coming on the channel myself real soon, and I look forward to having you on my channel as well so we can reciprocate there.
Absolutely.
How I got into football, man, is it's a pretty typical story, I'd say, in that it's a little father-son bonding, right? I mean, how many times do you get that where you either choose the same team or the opposite team of whoever your dad roots for when you're growing up? And for me, we moved out from the East Coast when I was like 8 years old, and the Patriots had just been blown out by the Bears in the '85 Super Bowl. So
wow.
We moved right about that time, moved out of New England. I wasn't really much of a football fan at that point, followed it a little bit, but, what do you know at 8 years old? Got to the Bay Area, and my dad started getting tickets to go to the Niners game. So he started taking my brother and I, and it was just love at first sight. Like, how do you not get Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott, Roger? Like, it was just off the chain, and I fell in love immediately, right? It was amazing. It was just good times at Candlestick Park, amazing memories there. The '94 season was actually the first season my brother went away to college, so I got to go to every single game with my dad that year.
Awesome.
And it was like after that was it, right? Unfortunately, that was the last year that anything good happened. But maybe that's a sign that I need to attend every single game this season in order to make it happen again.
You might be the linchpin to us going back to the Super Bowl this year, Rob. Not about the players, not about the quarterbacks. It's about you being in the stands. And hey, man, if that was what it takes, you got to make that sacrifice, my friend.
That's right. I'm going to need you to tell my wife the same thing, that it's a paramount importance for me to be at every single game.
That is amazing. Hey, great story, man. And Pioneer, Rob Shu, another bald, bright fellow, great professional setup. And by the way, you already got another sub. He's already subbing, and everything's in the description. It's already been a productive stream. Jay Mangold, nice Neil, Rob. Mangold, we brought him out of hiding, my friend. We brought him out of hiding.
Yeah, what's up, Josh?
So today, a lot of 49er streams are talking about training camp. Obviously, we got the first preseason game starting Saturday. I kind of wanted to do something different with you, Rob, because I enjoy what's in between those ears of yours. I feel like you always have a really good way of looking at things. So I thought let's focus on the NFC West and kind of project what we think is going to happen moving forward. And I thought we'd start with ranking the NFC West defenses. Now, every single team pretty much made some kind of acquisitions in the offseason to bulk up their defense. the Seahawks seem to just take our scrubs and add them to their team. Obviously,
which let's be honest, that's an upgrade to their defense from last
definitely,
year, right?
definitely. Rams pretty much kind of stayed pat, but they obviously have a lot of studs over there. The 49ers did a lot to bring in some depth to the defensive line, and then obviously Arizona made the biggest splashes with the picks that they made. So, looking at the defenses in the NFC West, how would you rank them? And let's go from 4 to 1.
Okay, that's fair. So let me kind of get into my logic behind why I arrived at my rankings. I dove in to really do a deep dive here. Thank you, by the way, for forcing me to do this. I need to get set up for fantasy football. I need to get outside of the sphere of 49ers, and I need to do a league-wide deep dive. I'm going to be in like 6 leagues this year, so I got to get my prep in before the drafts. And so this was a helpful exercise for me going into the NFC West to start with. Obviously, teams I'm fairly familiar with, but doing a bit more of a deep dive. So I started to look back at last year's statistics and looking at the passing yards by defense. Obviously, the Rams were the number 1 ranked overall defense last year. So it makes sense that they didn't have to do much in the offseason to retain that title. They came out the bat with an amazing pass defense, right? Allowed 3,051 yards. We weren't that far behind that, though, with 3,327. Arizona with 3,623 and Seattle with 4,560. So Seattle severely struggled in the pass defense and let go of Shaquille Griffin.
Right.
So that was troublesome to me. Then I looked at the rushing yards and I thought, all right, I was pretty sure we were stout in there, but I was actually pretty surprised to see right behind LA, again, number 1 with 1,400 yards about. Seattle comes in at 1,500 yards with a fairly stout defense. And when you look at them adding Kerry Hyder to that mix, as far as run defense goes, I think that's a solid get for the Seattle Seahawks. And then obviously we come in 3rd there with 1,700 yards rushing, and Arizona with 2,000 yards rushing. They obviously needed some help there. Key additions, what I saw was Arizona, I think adding J.J. Watt does help that run game. I think anytime you can get in someone that's as heady as that individual, that's as calm under pressure, that is as seasoned as J.J. Watt, I think that's going to help along the defensive front as far as stopping the run. Zaven Collins, obviously we don't know what he's going to look like, but a good investment. A couple of rookie cornerbacks. They did lose Patrick Peterson, but in the way he was playing last year for Arizona, I don't know that that's a huge loss from a scheme standpoint. And then looking at Seattle, like you said, they grabbed a couple of our guys, Akello Witherspoon and Kerry Hyder. I'm big on Hyder. I still see the potential in Witherspoon, but I don't know that he's going to have a huge impact off the jump. And then for us, obviously, we lost Sherm, we lost Witherspoon, we lost Hyder, but we got back a lot of healthy players. I think that's the big storyline for our defense, is just getting those bodies back. I also think Samson Ebukam was a fantastic add. I expect him to have a very significant role, depending on how many snaps we get out of D Ford. And the D-line depth, man, talk about some key additions. That's just going to be wave after wave after wave of guys that are really solid along that line. So I'm excited to see that. And in LA, like you said, they didn't do all that much, but to stay pat is okay when you're the number 1 overall defense. They did lose a couple of key members to the secondary, but in my mind, when you have an elite D-line and 1 shutdown corner, you're pretty well set. You can scheme around that to cover the rest of the people on the field. Only against someone like the 49ers, where you have a number 1 receiving threat as a tight end, do you really see some schematic
issues?
Yeah, totally. So, all that said, where does that leave us? I mean, to me, the team that struggled last year that didn't seem to do enough is Seattle. I feel like Seattle, the pass defense was bad last year. The loss of Griffin, it could actually, the pass defense was bad last year. With the loss of Griffin, it could actually be worse. I don't expect the same level of production from Kerry Hyder as he did last year for the 49ers. I think that was a schematic fit for him. I think
Yeah.
he's a very solid player, but I could see a bit of a regression to the norm there.
We've seen it happen before, right? He's left the team before, didn't make a lot of noise, came back to the 49ers, obviously had a great season last year, and now, has been able to go out and get paid by Seattle. I think Kusrik does a lot to get the best out of him. So didn't mean to cut you off, but continue.
No, not at all. I was going on way too long there. I needed some feedback there. So that's Seattle for me at number 4. And let me preface this also, backtrack a little bit and say that this entire division, in my mind, is a neck and neck race. I mean, it is the tightest division in the league, in my mind, and also the most talented. I think that you could make an argument for the AFC West, obviously. You can make an argument for the AFC North. But certainly in those two divisions, it's not as tight together. The fourth team isn't as good as the fourth team in the NFC West, in my mind. And then once you get Seattle in there, just a step above them, I have Arizona. I expect some slight improvement against the run this year with those additions, but I don't see that as a top-end defense either. I think both of those are middling defenses in my mind.
And then how does your top 2 round out?
Top 2, you would think number 1 would be San Francisco because I'm a homer through and through, but they're my number 2. I think that this unit has the potential to be the best in the league. I truly believe that. But in order to do that, they truly have to be the if healthy moniker.
Right.
And I don't know that you can say that with a straight face anymore. I think that it has to be considered. There's significant depth issues on the corner. If we lose one of those 2 starters, it could get ugly unless one of our rookies steps up significantly. I think that they have the potential to be the number 1, but I got to give it to the number 1 overall last year. I got to give it to LA. I want to pick San Francisco, but the edge goes to the defending champs in LA and Aaron Donald and Ramsey on the edge.
Got you. And Kittle jumping in. Love hearing what Rob has to say. He's very intelligent. Kittle, that's exactly why I brought him on the show. So I think you make very, very good arguments. And I would say, 4 and 3, I would put exactly there. Now, let me give you my reasoning for why I believe the 49ers can actually jump the Rams.
Sell me.
So one thing that is the biggest change is we have a brand new defensive coordinator, and his name is DeMeco Ryans. And he has already come out and said that his philosophy is more of an aggressive philosophy than, what Robert Saleh has played. I think we're going to see more of what Robert Saleh kind of transitioned to at the end of the season, but he was kind of doing it due to injuries versus that's kind of like the style of football he wants to play. And what I mean by that is press man, like more man coverage, press man coverage, and then more aggressive with the blitzes. So I believe already that's going to, just the scheme itself is going to give more pressure to the offenses that they play, and that's going to cause more turnovers, which is one thing the 49ers defense wasn't very good at last season. All right. Number 2, one of the reasons why our defensive numbers dropped in the running game isn't necessarily because of the running backs. It's because of mobile quarterbacks, right? So we would get gashed by mobile quarterbacks, and some of that had to do with just scheme issues with people not sticking to their gaps, but also some of that had to do that with not being able to have that much speed on the edge last season that could contain quarterbacks like a Russell Wilson, like a Kyler Murray. So now we have guys like Samson Ebukam. If D Ford is able to come back, which is somebody that we didn't expect to have this season, that's some more speed. Nick Bosa is supposed to be back, even though we haven't seen him at full capacity in training camp. He's coming along and should be ready for the season, if not at the beginning, definitely, as the season goes on. And I also believe the depth inside is going to cause a ruckus for whomever the offensive line is. The last time we've had this type of depth was 2019, and that obviously was a Super Bowl year for us as far as making it to the Super Bowl. Obviously, we had a DeForest Buckner back then, which is a huge loss that we don't have right now. But Javon Kinlaw is in his second season now. This is where usually defensive linemen start to, ascend. So second, third year. We also got a lot of guys that are motivated on one-year deals, like Maurice Hurst. We have Kentavious Street, who's been doing an amazing job in training camp. And then we also got Eric Armstead, who now is going to be able to move back inside because of Bosa and a D Ford. And now we have Samson Ebicom as well, and Arden Key if we need him there. So all of that is without even talking about the best player that we have on defense, which is Fred Warner, right? And we have Fred Warner and Big Game Dre that's there in the middle. And I think this is their opportunity to even take another step up, because they're going to be coached by a person that's played the same position that they're playing and played it at a very high level. So I expect Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw to have the best season that they've ever had. Now, you brought up the cornerback depth, and I think this is just more kind of just like, we have to say this because all of our depth are rookies. But if you look at who the rookies are and how they played in college and what they're even doing through training camp, these guys look like ballers. A guy like Ambry Thomas, who I'm his biggest cheerleader, I believe he can, if given the opportunity, can even push Mosley for that starting spot, right? And we brought back K1, who is one of the best slot corners that is in the game, out in the game. And we also have a guy like Jimmy Ward, who can play corner if we need to at a very high clip. So for me, I'm really excited about this defense because of the interchangeable pieces that we have. I think we've upgraded majorly on talent, like you said, by bringing guys back. But also in the draft, I think we really brought in some pieces that can really help the secondary. And for me, I think because it was kind of close, like the numbers you spewed off, it wasn't like the Rams were blowing the 49ers out. And I would say the 49ers last year, we were dealing with injuries like no other. We were starting guys that aren't even on the team anymore, people that were just plug and play because we had so many injuries. Now we have depth. We have our starters back. I really feel like we're going to be neck and neck with the Rams, but I do agree with you. It's between those two. I think we have closed the gap and have the ability to go over, but I understand, at this point, it's a lot of projection, so you got to go with the Rams first. But I have nothing but faith that the 49ers are going to be right up there in contention as well.
I like it. I mean, I hope that you are right and I am wrong in this respect. I absolutely think that the potential is there. You're right. To me, I had to go for those that had proven it versus those that need to prove it. I went with the reigning champion. But I think that you're absolutely spot on in that if everything clicks this year, this defense is going to be lights out. I truly believe potential for best defense in the league.
I agree with you. Well, let's move to the other side of the ball. So one thing that I will go to anybody with is the NFC West has the best receiver cores in the league. I think that top down, every team has two bona fide wide receiver ones, and which makes it really difficult to play corner in the NFC West because there's nowhere to hide. You're going up against somebody that if you mess up is going to burn you and could go all the way to the house with the ball. So let's talk about how you rank the wide receiver cores in the NFC West.
Yeah, so I started to look at it, and this one is tough for me because there are so many different ways to look at these receivers. Who's the best receiver in the division? Who has the top two? Who has the most underrated? Who has the greatest potential? And so I looked at it that way, and I gave those rankings before I did the rankings of all four together. I think our top two, Ayuk and Samuel, are the greatest potential duo. I see them as having the highest ceiling amongst all the duos throughout the league. I think that the most underrated duo, and one that I don't even give enough credit to, is LA. I think Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are great, very productive, and don't get much hype, right? They're continually left out of the conversation. Obviously, I think the best actual duo production-wise has to go to Seattle at this particular point in time, because in Arizona, one of those duo is coming off of injury. But when you look at Lockett and Metcalf, I mean, that's an amazing top two.
Right.
And then you look at Arizona, and I think they have the best individual receiver in the division and one of the best in the league in D-Hop. I mean, that's just, how do you cover that guy? It's tough. And so when I looked at the additions, what did we do to get better? What did everyone else in the division do to get better? Arizona invested fairly heavily. You know, they drafted Rondale Moore, and they brought in A.J. Green, and that builds out their room beyond Hopkins pretty well.
Right.
They did let go of Trent Sherfield, who I'm guessing they saw as a special teams guy, but
he might be our wide receiver 3.
Yeah. So true. So true. Sad, but true.
And they still have Kirk there too, who was a pretty decent player for them last season as well.
Yeah, he's an on again, off again type of guy, but certainly flashes great potential. Seattle invested a second rounder in Dwayne Eskridge, and although he's not made the field yet, it seems he's tracking along from the toe injury he had early on in camp, and appears to be ready to get back anytime soon. And that seems like a great addition to an already deep room. For us, obviously, a little bit of chaos beyond the first two. KB out the door to New England, but bringing in Sanu, Sherfield, I feel
Juwan Jennings.
Yeah, coming back from injury. Hurd, I don't know what to think at this point with Hurd.
I don't know if he's going to make the team.
Yeah, his comments on Hurd left me dejected, and then him being back at practice today and 3 catches gave me a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get my hopes up too much, because I just know that it hasn't worked out well in the past. So when I look at the rankings here, this is going to seem a little bit counterintuitive, but this one to me is, again, all jammed up. We're not talking about really 1 through 4. I feel like we're talking about 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. I think that it is very close together. I don't think there's a huge gap in between these teams. But at number 4, I had to throw Arizona, because beyond who they have catching the ball, I had to look at who they have throwing the ball and who they have calling the plays. I had to factor that in with Arizona. I couldn't look beyond it, because I feel like that's going to impact the production this year. So I love the talent within the wide receiver room. To me, the jury's still out on Murray and on Kingsbury. So that's the X factor that I don't really have figured out, and put them a hair below. LA, to me, you bring in Stafford, and now you've upgraded every one of those receivers that were already pretty damn good last year. So I threw them in at 3rd place in there, and I would also throw out that I expect each team in the division to throw for more than 4,000 yards this year. I think every one of the teams in the division will eclipse 4,000 yards.
Nice.
Passing. And then I think that, unfortunately, for me, number 2 is us. Again, the homer in me pushes this, and maybe even it's the homer in me that gets this at number 2 and not lower on this list. But I believe that an upgraded rushing attack is really going to open up the additional yak yardage that we are just going to eat up this year. I think this offense is going to explode, and to me, it doesn't matter too much which quarterback is operating. They have wildly different games,
right?
Wildly different ceilings, but I think that either one could execute within this offense. And so to me, that leaves Seattle, unfortunately, and it has a lot to do with Russell Wilson. I mean, you have a bona fide stud in Metcalf. You have just a hair below that in Lockett. The investment of the 2nd round pick is a big one. Who knows if it pans out, but it seems like a good talent. And then you have Russell Wilson throwing the ball. So to me, unfortunately, it pains me to say it, that's the number 1.
Yeah, and once again, very, very logical. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on other teams could be wide receiver ones for any other team, in the league, not only their own. The thing about Seattle is you don't know what their rushing game is going to be like, right? They obviously have Carson back there, but I don't know if it has to go on Russ's shoulders again and they're just let Russ cook. It doesn't seem like that's the route they want to go, right? This offseason, it seems so long ago, but there was a lot of talk about Russ leaving Seattle. And a lot of that had to do with difference of philosophies with the coaching staff and him. So even though that's kind of been silenced, that can't be just gone. You know what I mean? It's not like just all of a sudden the coaching staff is like, yeah, let's go back to let Russ cook. No, I think they're going to be a more balanced offense. And the one thing that I think the 49ers receivers have over any of the other receiving cores, maybe other than maybe the Rams do it too with Woods, is their receivers also are a big part of the running game. And so
that's a great point.
That makes them dual threats. And that is why I would put the 49ers at number one, because their production, I think, is not only in the passing game, which is, I think, going to elevate now. Because even though the one person that we have to put in the 49ers receiving core is George Kittle, because he is probably the number one pass catcher on the team. Even though he's not a wide receiver, but he is going to be in the passing game. I think that also with him in the passing game gives a lot more man-on-man on the outside with Debo and Ayuk, which these guys are going to beat you one-on-one. And especially if Trey plays, if he starts, now we have somebody who's willing to take shots down the field. And I think that's going to really expose how great Brandon Ayuk is going to be, because I think he's going to be our bona fide number one wide receiver and finish in the top 10 wide receivers in the league, and really prove to everybody he was a solid person to draft up, because I think he isn't getting the national notoriety, but a lot of that is he had second, third string quarterbacks throwing to him without a running game his whole career last year, or his whole first rookie year. That isn't going to be the case this year. Right. So I do think name-wise, the Hawks are going to be probably who people pick, but my money is on the 49ers wide receiving duo to do really well. And I'd probably even I think the Cardinals are going to do really well, because I think Rondale Moore is going to be a beast. I think he's really going to explode onto the scene this season. And there's not much pressure on him because people aren't really, talking. They're thinking more AJ Green than him. But right. I really think he could have a big season for them. So like I said in the first, what we said earlier, I think these wide receivers throughout all the teams are the best in the as far as the division. That we have the toughest wide receivers in the league. So it's going to be fun to watch, man. But I would probably go Niners, Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals. And it's really tough to put the Cardinals down low because they have the best receiver out of all the receivers by a mile, right?
That was the hardest thing for me, was to put them last when I'm like, wait, DeAndre Hopkins is last? But I think that for me, that unknown of will Murray take that next step is really the key there. Right. It's an uncertainty, whereas it seems like a proven commodity for the other three teams. I would agree with your sentiment around questioning, is it going to be a year where Wilson is truly allowed to throw, or will Pete Carroll rein it in a bit and get back more to that power run that he loves to base everything off of? And I thought they were headed in a good direction. No, sorry, I'm thinking of LA. For the running game, I thought they were headed in a really positive direction until that injury offset it. But
yeah, man. So it's going to be fun to watch, because I think that's going to be great. And I believe in fantasy. I know you were talking about all these receivers are going to be gone pretty quickly in most people's fantasy drafts. So let us move to where I think you could be a homer and be intellectual and and rank them this time. So let's go to the running backs in the NFC West and where you think these will line up.
Yeah. So, I mean, first, I'm glad. I thought I was going to be the homer on this show, and so far it hasn't worked out that way. And so I'm thrilled about that because I hope you're right about these ones and I'm wrong. But this one, yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to get away from the homer in me. So I was a little surprised at first when I looked up the rushing yardage because of Arizona jumping off the page with 2,200 yards above LA with 2,000, Seattle with almost 2,000, and us just below 1,900. So again, stacked pretty tightly together, all successful rushing attacks. And then, you know, it occurred to me, well, obviously it's
Kyler Murray.
Yeah, Kyler Murray's rushes in there. So clearly that's what jumps them up. The key additions, I again thought that. Oh shit! I didn't update that. My bad. On the key additions, Seattle, you know, losing Carlos Hyde, does that really change anything for them? I'm not so sure. Arizona, obviously swapping out. Who did they have last year?
Kendrick Drake, and they brought in James Conner.
Right, James Conner, I think, is a solid addition, but what he showed last year was sort of a fraction of himself, and I'll be interested to see if he regains form, because early in his career, it sure looked like he was headed on a very positive trajectory, and then last year fell pretty flat with the Steelers. Could be a better fit in Arizona with this scheme. We shall see. LA losing Cam Akers, that's tough. I mean,
Really tough.
I would have put them a lot higher on this list if it weren't for that fact. But that's a devastating injury. That was going to be a bell cow. That was going to be a high draft pick in fantasy drafts, right? That was going to be a guy that gets a lot of carries and puts up solid numbers week in, week out. And then there's the 49ers, which is clearly hard to pick one back that's going to crush it. But when you look at the room as a whole, gaining Trey Sermon, Wayne Gallman, I think, is a very sneaky addition. I think that is a low-key bell cow pickup. Gaining 4.6 yards average last year behind the Giants front when lots of teams were stacking the line to stop the run was no small feat. I think that he is a capable Tevin Coleman type back. And then Elijah Mitchell with that breakaway speed, really pretty spectacular. And you have to figure in Trey Lance. Whether he's starting or not, you know he's going to be in for some packages. And
Right.
he's going to put up somewhere in the neighborhood of 600, 800 yards. I mean, he is going to be a terror for defenses to try and stop with that speed and that size. It's just going to be ridiculous. So for me, in the rankings, LA dropped, and I got to put them at number 4. And that's all of because of the loss of Akers. It's, you know, you added Stafford, and so teams are going to be trying to defend the pass significantly. Maybe that opens up lanes for the running game, and Darrell Henderson is no joke, but I thought Cam Akers really was going to be the bell cow, and he was going to be the guy that made this go. And now I wonder at the depth beyond Darrell Henderson and how that's going to play out.
Right.
And then third, I think that they've been fairly consistent, and if they shift back to more of the run, they could climb in this list. But I've got Seattle in there with the caveat that all 3 of the second, third, and fourth place teams I have real close together in this. So again, back to the backfield in Seattle. Losing Hyde really didn't matter for them. They've got a healthy Chris Carson, hopefully a healthy Rashad Penny, and then Russell Wilson will always add some yardage in there as well. But I do think that it's fair to have some health concerns for Carson and Penny, who seem to get dinged up on a pretty regular basis. And part of that could be from a porous offensive line in Seattle, and part of that could be from a physical running style, which, as we know with our backs, just leads to injury. That just is the NFL. And then second to me is Arizona. And they get the edge here over Seattle only because of the yards that Murray's going to run. I think that you look at Wilson and Murray, and there's an additional 200, 300, 400 yards that Murray's going to scramble for over Wilson, because I think that in what I've seen to this point, Murray still is fairly quick to decide to run, whereas Wilson has clearly evolved into one of the best pocket passers in the league. And so that's a true dual threat where it's pass first and then escape out the back and torture us like he always and does. So that, to me, is the difference in Seattle and Arizona, edging out Arizona because Murray's going to put up more yards. And that leaves a clear winner here for me, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. I think this shit is just going to be off the chain. I mean, I think that this is going to be not just the number one rushing attack in the division with the addition of both Treys, the workhorse potential in Gallman, and the exciting rookie in Elijah Mitchell. I think this has the potential to be the best rushing attack in the league. Up there with Baltimore, up there with Cleveland. I think that this is going to be scary.
Yeah, and you didn't even bring up Mostert, who's still there. And,
yes. By the way, I have apologies to Mostert if he's watching this. I have a signed picture of him up in my man cave. I am a big Mostert fan, no doubt about that. And I think, to me, the key there is usage on him. To me, you gotta have the other bell cows so that you keep Mostert in that 10 to 15 carry range, averaging something like 12 carries a game.
Yeah, and I mean, you go back to when the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan were most elite in the running game, and that was back to 2019, right? And they had the three-headed monster, Tevin Coleman, who pretty much started and took a bulk of the bruiser-type hits. Yeah. And then you came in with the Breida and the Mostert change of pace that would just seem like every time they touched the ball, they were running for like 10, 15 yards down, down the throat of the defenses. And last year, Tevin Coleman wasn't the same Tevin Coleman. He finally looked like long in the tooth Tevin Coleman. McKinnon finally got to play and was pretty much healthy for the whole season, but his speed and burst was just gone. Yeah. Wilson Jr. obviously played really well, but couldn't stay healthy. So I think all of I think Kyle Shanahan saw that and was like, look, our rushing game went from ranked top 3 to be 15th. Now we need to just get as many offensive linemen and as many running backs as possible. 50% of their draft was geared directly to the running game, right? They picked up 2 offensive linemen, 2 running backs, and it seems like the 2 running backs that they got are going to be the starters, right? Even though you stated Wayne Gallman, who I believe is a great pickup, I think it's going to be hard for him to make the starting rotation, because I think Trey Sermon is going to be the Tevin Coleman role. Mostert obviously is going to be Mostert, and I think Mitchell's going to come in and be able to do that Breida type role, and then Wayne Gallman will get some. Probably come in if any of those guys got injured type of situation. But I agree with you. I think that the Niners run away with this in the NFC West. I think Arizona's running game is going to be good. I think Chase Edmonds is kind of like addition by subtraction. Now that Drake isn't there, he's going to get more of the ball, and he was gashing defenses last year. So I think he's going to be their running back 1 with James Conner coming in, and being more of that power back for them. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be 1 49ers, 2 Arizona, 3 Seattle, and then, the Rams are going to be 4 because they're going to have the least mobile quarterback, right? For once, because if we're expecting Trey to start, all of a sudden, the Rams are the only one with the quarterback that can't run. So, yeah, that's pretty exciting. A bunch of people jumped into the chat. Just wanted to say, hey, my dude Brandon, thank you for jumping in. He's not a 49er fan, though. He's a Raiders fan. So,
hey,
obviously,
at least it's in the Bay.
Right.
Not really, but kind of.
We had Kidlow. I am not sponsored by Ralph Lauren, but I feel like if I wear enough, maybe they'll come holler at me if the channel gets big enough. So that's great. Pinor, I do have a pink polo. I've worn it before, and definitely on that Kanye drip. Let's see. I think that's about it. So let us move now into the quarterbacks, my friend. So finally, the most important position on an NFL team, the quarterback. We have some good ones in this division. Obviously, we don't know who the starter is going to be for the 49ers, but let us do the top 5. knowing that we know the starters for the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals, and then let's do the two that possibly could be starters for the 49ers.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you're okay with it, in this one, I don't think there's much surprise in starting with number one and working backwards. I think it's more excitement down at the end of the list.
Okay.
So I think that the number one, to me, I'm going with what have you proven? What have you shown me? Not what is your potential at this point. But I'm factoring in potential a little bit. And, the Trey Lance, that's a hard one to put in this list because of the idea that we've only seen practice to this point, and we'll get a lot more information as the preseason rolls on. But in my mind, he has checked every single box that he's been asked to check to this point. So it's just about allowing him to check more boxes.
Right.
You need to say, what are the next things he needs to do in order to progress? Because he's done everything to this point. But number one to me is got to be Russell Wilson. I think that he is, stats would say it, win percentage would say it, Super Bowl wins would say it. And then, as much as I may want to be a homer here, I think, again, going with proven statistics, I think that the new addition to the division is the number two.
Stafford.
Stafford creeps in there. And I will be interested to see if he can continue to do it while winning. There is something to say for those yards that get racked up when your team is behind and you're trying to come back. There's certainly some padding of statistics that happens there. I don't think that's the case with Stafford, just to be clear. But I do think that it's something to keep in mind. And I'll be interested to see how he picks up the playbook, what Sean McVay does with him, and how productive he is. But my anticipation is that he has a very good year. And then the last three, man, that's tricky. It's Murray is still an enigma to me. So I'll be
you're not that high on Kyler Murray. This is interesting.
I'm not. I think the talent is there, but I haven't seen him put it together consistently yet.
Right.
To me, that's
for a full season,
what it's all about.
Because he had like that section in the beginning of the season last year where you're like, oh my God, he might be the MVP. Right. Then he did get injured to give him some bill. Like that shoulder injury happened. And obviously he wasn't the same quarterback after that. So, I mean, we haven't seen it. This is year 3 though. So we'll see. Usually that's when, these quarterbacks tend to break out.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this is tough. So are you with me on 1 and 2? You put Wilson at 1 and Stafford at 2?
Absolutely.
Man, I feel like I could draw straws on these, but I'm going to give the edge to Jimmy because of the production, because of the fact that he has had, the one good season that took us to the Super Bowl. And I put some of that Super Bowl on Jimmy. Certainly there are some aspects of his game that were not great, certainly in the second half. But I feel like we lost that game because we gave up a big lead. Right. We were ahead with very little time remaining. I was in Miami, very happy, picturing the celebration I was going to have that night after the game was done. And then it started to slip away. And sure, Jimmy could have completed that pass to Sanders. Maybe that would have been enough. But with the way Mahomes was just chucking the ball, I'm not convinced we would have stopped them from coming back down and scoring one more time to win it again. So I don't necessarily blame him for the loss. I think that was an incredible season. So I would put him up there. And then if I'm going with production, I guess I got to put Murray next with 4th and Trey 5th. But that is purely because of the fact that I haven't seen him in a live game yet. If we're talking potential, I put him up at the top next to Wilson. I would put them right next to each other. And I would put Kyler Murray higher on the list with potential if we were looking strictly at potential. But, at some point, you got to look at what have you done for me lately?
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of hard to argue with the list that you made. I think it's pretty accurate. Obviously, Russ is going to be number 1. He's the only one on the list that's been a starting quarterback and won a Super Bowl, right? So Jimmy has 2 rings, but that was because Tom Brady was the starting quarterback. But I would put Matthew Stafford there, even though, Garoppolo has taken a team to the Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford, has had more consistency over the long term, and been a guy who's thrown for over 4,000 yards multiple times. At 3, I would probably put Kyler Murray over Jimmy Garoppolo, and the reason being, I don't think Kyler Murray needs a certain system to be successful, whereas I think Jimmy is limited in what he can do. I don't think Kyler Murray's limited in what he could do. I think he could throw the ball deep. He could throw the ball short. He could run. The only thing is, obviously, sometimes his size gets in the way of being able. But as far as just accuracy and arm strength, I would have to give him that over Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think you're right. I think he has better tools.
Yeah. And I think when we've seen him play well, we've seen him, be successful. And that's kind of what we have to say about Jimmy as well, because we've also seen Jimmy not play well. So we can't just give him the benefit of his 2019 season and not give Kyler Murray the benefit of when he's playing really well. And I think when Kyler Murray's playing really well, he's a much better quarterback than when Jimmy Garoppolo's playing really well. And that's why I would put him over there. And then, in my heart, I think Trey Lance is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC West, but we've only seen him against the 2s right now. And that also in training camp. And to be honest, I haven't even seen him. I've seen clips. I haven't been able to see him consistently or anything like that. So I'm just going off of the word of our guys like Grant and Jack Hammer and, those guys that are watching. But yeah, man, I think other than that, I would swap Kyler Murray and Jimmy on your list, but it's sad to see the 49ers at 4 and 5 though, right? I think that if Trey could play though, he's going to move up that list, and we won't have the worst quarterback in the NFC West.
He most certainly will move up that list. I just can't imagine him not being successful with what I've seen to this point. He just seems to have everything that you want from a physical standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from an intellectual standpoint. It's the entire package, and it's just, like I said earlier, to me, it's just about checking the boxes to ensure that he's putting it all together. I mean, everyone wants to rush to put him in, but just look back at the last time you started a new job or went to a new school, and I don't mean you, obviously, I mean our audience, but think about the last time you were put into a new situation and how uncomfortable that feels for the first X amount of time. Now imagine that's being in the NFL and how much more, I don't know, just overwhelming that could be. Now, these guys have been prepared for it at a level that average Joe probably never has.
Right.
But it's still a significant life change. There's certain things in life that are the greatest stressors, and they've been studied ad infinitum, right? Death, job loss, moving. These are things that cause stress. And Trey just went through 2 of them, right? He just moved across country to the Bay Area to try and buy a house in a ridiculous housing market. He's got some coin to do it.
Right.
And then he started a new job in a new field with a bunch of professionals that are grown-ass men who have been doing this for a little while. So
and competing with somebody who, it's not just like might be replacing somebody who is well beloved in that team as well, which is another added level of pressure. I agree, man. I wanted to give you this topic because I think this could get kind of spicy. So let's go with how you would rank the NFC coaches. And the reason why I think this could get spicy is because you are someone who is pretty fair. I know you haven't put your homer hat on yet. You've been pretty fair, reasonable. Using
my homer hat.
And what I mean by this is you've been utilizing the rubric of what has been shown versus potential. And I think if you use that criteria, it's going to be very interesting how you rank these coaches. So let's hear it, because I know you're just as big of a Shannon stan as I am. So let us hear your coaches ranking for the NFC West.
You interpreted that correctly, because I did 2 rankings. I ranked them based on accomplishments, and then I did it based on potential and the eye test. Because I needed one where we came out on top. So there's a spoiler there on who won the potential and eye test rankings there, right?
Oh man,
But
that's great.
but I do have to be fair, and I got to rank the coaches on accomplishments as I did the other rankings that we did. So starting from the bottom, I think it's clear cut when you look at accomplishments who hasn't accomplished a thing yet, and that's Arizona. They're stuck in that rebuilding mode where it's that middle of the road 8-8, and I think that to me that's the type of team that I see there again, like a 9-7, a 9-8 type of team. It's going to take me forever to do those records in 17 games instead of 16 games.
Pioneer saying, "Who's Cliff?"
Who's Cliff? Exactly. Get that guy out of here because he doesn't belong in the same conversation with the other three.
Okay.
Then, unfortunately, when we're looking at accomplishments, coming in at number 3, San Francisco 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. I mean, there's a Super Bowl appearance in there, but it's buried in the middle of 3 losing seasons. So the results are what they are. I'm not going to sugarcoat those. That's the reality. Yes, he and his coaching staff were able to get us to the highest high, weren't able to get over that peak, but we were on that damn peak, and that's something. But can't do it sustained. You got to be docked for that. And so for me, that's why LA sneaks in ahead at number 2 is, yeah, they had the Super Bowl appearance, they had the Super Bowl loss, but they have the better overall record. They have more consistent winning seasons than the 49ers underneath Sean McVay. And then as much as I hate to say it because it pains me to watch him chew his gum on the sideline in the rain, but Pete Carroll, man, you got to give it to him. That guy, year in and year out, it doesn't seem to matter. He and Russell Wilson are going to drag that team into the playoffs, whether it's by sheer force or not. So to me, you got to give him the edge based on accomplishments. That's my rankings.
Yeah. And, it's tough to argue. I think what would be interesting is if McVay had a Super Bowl ring with him as well. I would move him over Pete because I think that the consistency that the Rams have had is just right up there with the consistency that the Seahawks have had. But obviously Pete has the ring and McVay doesn't. So, yeah, I'm with you. Pete Carroll, McVay, Shanahan, and then down here underneath is Cliff Kingsbury, who really has to look in the mirror and be like, man, I'm not even like on the same, like I can't even be at the same table as these guys. And at least, with Shanahan, he has taken a team as a head coach to the Super Bowl, but he also has shown success in the league at offensive coordinator. We haven't even seen Cliff Kingsbury do that, right? So yeah, I mean,
didn't even have tremendous success
as a college coach, right? Coach. So yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I know 49er fans look at it and obviously, we are part of the Shanistan Nation and it's really hard for us not to put them at number 1 and everything. But if we are being reasonable, if we are taking into consideration actual like results, you can't put him above guys like McVay and definitely not over Pete Carroll. So, but let's go over potential just so that we don't leave out.
Let's get unreasonable here. Let's get unreasonable so that we can't
leave this off. We can't leave Shanahan at number 3. No. Go with your potential list.
I mean, it's obvious when you look at the eye test who number 1 is, right? I actually think it does what you just said about the difference between Seattle and LA, how you would flip them if McVay had won that Super Bowl instead of lost it. I think that's what happens in the potential, right? Cliff still, sorry, buddy, still down at the bottom, still reigning in that 4th spot. But I think it flips LA and Seattle, LA being the number 2, Seattle being the number 3, because of that eye test, because of what you see from the play calling by McVay and the creativity that he puts forth. But no one puts out the creative, jaw-dropping eye test, just make you want to get up and yell your head off like Kyle Shanahan. And to me, it's just obvious when you put on the tape and you watch it and just get riled up by it and you listen to the announcers in the league too and the way they talk about the play design. It really is something special. And I feel like we are fortunate as 49er fans to have him as the head coach because of what we get to watch. And I think it's almost a shame that we don't seem to, well, maybe that's not true. I think that there is a segment of the fan base that is very hard on Kyle, and maybe rightfully so because of the record and the whole you
And the
are what your
results,
record says you are.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, I guess the problem for me is I see it. I see it on the field. And to me, anyone who's like, well, I'm not sold on Shanahan, I'm like, are you crazy? Like, do you not see it? Like, are you blind? Can you not just watch the game? But maybe that's the homer in me. Maybe that's the homer in me finally coming out clear as day in this broadcast.
We needed some homer because you know what? I needed more of that because just like Kidlow, we are all only Shan supporters, man. We are all only Shan supporters. That's great. I agree with you. I think potential. I mean, if Shanahan had a Super Bowl, if he had won, if we had been able to fend off the Kansas City Chiefs for those 10 minutes, you know, he's by far number one on this list, right? Because that changes everything. So let's get to it, man. Who's going to win the NFC West, Rob? Who is going to win? And let's go 4-1 so that we can kind of build up some like, I guess I'm missing the word, but let's build up the anticipation.
Yeah,
there
it
is.
Anticipation, a little suspense, keep people guessing what it
there
might
it is.
be. Yeah, so again, in this one, I think the number 4 spot strikes me as fairly obvious. I think that putting Arizona there, they are still in that process of defining who they truly are in my mind. I think Kyler Murray needs to take the next step as a passer. I feel like Cliff Kingsbury needs to take the next step as a head coach. And I hope that they're continuing to build that roster because it didn't strike me as one that could compete with the rest of the division. It seems to me as if they're trending in the right direction, and I do expect them to be above 500. I just don't think that they are going to do anything beyond taking 4th place within the division. So that's a little spoiler and a teaser there for me, is that I think everyone in the division ends up above 500, which would be spectacular.
Would be amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then for the next 2, they're neck and neck, and giving these away shows who the number 1 is. So I'll go slow on it to keep that anticipation building. But to me, this is not more than a game or 2 removed from first place and not a game or 2 removed from each other. So I think it's going to be neck and neck and neck, potentially with some tiebreakers coming in here. But for the 3 spot, I got to put in the Rams. And
wow,
this could be something where a lot of people disagree with me, but when you pair the number 1 overall defense with a significantly upgraded quarterback, even with the loss of their star running back, I think that this is going to be a competitive team, but that loss of the star running back does take them down a notch, right? So to me, this was tough. I started to sell myself on the idea that LA was the 2 spot, and then I had to bump them down because of Cam Akers. And I think that if I see something from the other backs on the roster, I may change my mind in preseason on this one. But for now, I got to put LA there. And that, to me, plugs in Seattle at the number 2 spot because I think you got the best quarterback in the division, a solid run game, and a somewhat suspect defense. But I believe that Wilson and those receivers will, again, carry this team. I mean, when I look at that flawed team last year, I have to remind myself they were the clear and away number 1 in the division last year. And so to put them at number 2 seems fitting, right? I think that they can, again, put themselves in that 12-5 range, even with the deficiencies on defense. And then the homer in me came out last time, so it's still out. I think that number 1 rushing attack in the league, a potential top 5 defense, potentially the number 1 defense, I'm hoping for a 13-4, 12-5 record. I honestly believe that this team has the potential to get there. And depending on how we let the quarterback situation play out, if we start Jimmy to begin the year and Trey comes in more towards midseason or toward the trade deadline and people have less tape on him, I could see a rookie going deep into the playoffs and winning a Super Bowl with Trey Lance. Because I think the key is just not letting enough teams get tape on him as the dual threat that he is. So that's my reason for not wanting him to start early on in the season where he has less of a grasp of the playbook. but teams have longer to prepare for him when the playoffs roll around. But I'm excited about this year, and I think we have a real shot at that number 1 seed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NFC West is, cutthroat, right? So
Yeah.
I think whoever wins this division probably, well, I guess now with the playoff system, only one team gets a bye, but this could definitely be a division where 3 teams get into the playoffs. So, and the only, I guess, conflict I have is I think the Rams are a little bit better than what you're saying. I mean, they were kind of neck and neck with Seattle a lot last season. And that was with Jared Goff at quarterback, right? So having Matthew Stafford there, I think, is going to be a big difference. Although Cam Akers did go down, he wasn't utilized much during the regular season. Last year, they used him more to the tail end of the season, and that's where he really picked up. So I think Henderson's going to do fine in the running game. They still have 2 of the most feared guys on defense in Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. They have, solid, receiver core, and obviously a genius in Sean McVay. All the things we say about Shanahan can be said about McVay as well. So I believe they're going to be the toughest competition for the 49ers. I think the Rams and the 49ers are going to be going back and forth as far as who wins that division. I imagine it coming down to the last few weeks of the season as far as who wins that, which is going to be pretty exciting. But I can't see it any other way. Rams got to finish 2. The Niners got to finish 1. And, I guess we agree, my man, as far as who's winning the NFC
number
West.
1. That's right. Yeah,
that's amazing.
I think that you're painting an accurate picture with the Rams to me, and that's why it was so tough, and it really was neck and neck between the 2, and the only edge I could give to the Seahawks was Wilson, but he is pretty spectacular as much as it pains me to say it, and so that gave me the edge. But honestly, as I started to read my notes, I almost sold myself at putting the Rams 2 instead of Seattle 3 as I was going through it live. So it's that close to me. And I do think that it's going to be a tough division. I think that it's going to be a log jam up top. And I think you're right that it's entirely possible, as much as it'll pain me to play either of those teams in the playoffs, it's entirely possible that you get all 3 into the playoffs from the NFC West.
I agree. I totally agree. I think it's going to be these 3. And I think the week 16, 17 are going to matter, which is a good thing because that means everybody's there's no rest. Nobody's going to be rested. Everybody's going into the playoffs with a sharp mindset playing, so I think one of these teams is really going to be the best competition for Tampa Bay, who I imagine is going to be, the top of the NFC overall with everybody they brought back.
Plus, we got big play Dre for weeks 17 and 18, so he's going to come in and just, do the same thing he did last year to end the season. Absolutely. We need it. Beautiful. Well, Rob, you did not disappoint, my friend. You came with everything I expected you to come with. You came with facts. You came with takes. You came with reasoning. And you also brought the homer out, man. And that is an unstoppable combination. Guys, if you want more of Rob, please follow him on Twitter. I have put the link to his YouTube channel, which he has promised me is going to be on fire here soon. He has a great setup behind him, a great personality. I can't wait to be a part of your YouTube channel as well, my friend. You can pencil me in whenever you need me. And I really, really, truly appreciate you coming on the show and doing this with me, man. It's always fun. Absolutely. I concur. This was a blast. Thank you for having me on, my friend.
Definitely. We're going to do it again. If not on your channel, again on my channel. Guys, please click on his YouTube channel. Please subscribe. We want to get him to that 1,000 barrier as quick as possible because, if we can't make money doing this, what are we doing this for, right? So, but thank you guys once again for tuning in, being a part of the show. Take a quick break. Go to the bathroom, do what you need to do, eat some food. In 20 minutes, I'm coming back with Niner Nick, and we're going to have just as much fun as we did during this show. Till then, guys, have a great night. You as well, my friend Rob. Have a great night, brother.
Thank you. You